Hey, it's Michael J. I just saw a documentary on Netflix about Abercrombie and Fitch, and it's called White Heat. And it was about the history of the company from the 1990s when it really exploded up until now. In fact, I was in my mid to early 20s when that store became really big, and so I was caught up in the trend of it just like everybody else. Now, I first started thinking about the older history of that company when my grandfather asked me. I was wearing a baseball hat that said Abercrombie and Fitch on it. And he says, "Isn't that the sporting goods store, or is that still around?" And so further conversation goes on, and it turns out, the store had gone back to the early part of the 20th century. In fact, during the first half of the 20th century, it was very well known to everybody as an elite sporting goods store. And in fact, it worked its way into popular culture. In fact, there's a lyric reference to it in the musical Finian's Rainbow.
Let's make the switch with just a few annuities. We'll hide these incongruities with cloaks from Abercrombie Fitch.
I was reading Harpo Marx's autobiography, and he talks about going into Abercrombie and Fitch to buy mallets for his new croquet hobby that he had in the 1920s. I love the history of a long-standing business of any kind, and this one's really interesting because the company as we know it now is so far removed from the company it started out to be.
Abercrombie & Fitch was founded in 1892 in New York City by David Abercrombie. The store originally catered to the elite outdoorsman. In 1900, Ezra Fitch, who was a devoted fan of the store and wealthy to boot, bought a major interest in the store, which was then branded the full name Abercrombie & Fitch Company. Eventually, Fitch bought out Abercrombie and was the sole owner between 1907 and 1928. The store actually sold sporting goods and the clothing to match everything from fishing, camping, golf, and tennis. A few famous customers were Teddy Roosevelt and Ernest Hemingway, who shot himself with a gun purchased at Abercrombie & Fitch. Of course, if you had the time and money for leisure recreational activities, you went to Abercrombie & Fitch for your supplies on Madison Avenue at 45th Street. The company had an array of other high-end items from fancy shaving creams and accessories to a gold and onyx chess set. By the 1970s, the company fell out of fashion and had difficulty competing with more inexpensive suppliers of similar goods. In 1976, Jake Oshman of Oshman Sporting Goods bought the company name and mailing list and continued Abercrombie as a mail-order supplier of outdoorsman supplies and eventually opened some physical stores in a few big cities. In 1988, Oshman sold the company to The Limited. That's when the focus turned to young adult clothing. If you remember in the 1990s when the brand exploded in popularity, they were doing a lot of rugby shirts. That was the last connection to sports the brand had. In the current Fifth Avenue flagship store, there is a mural by artist Mark Beard of young men working out and generally doing sporty things that is a nod to the original concept of the brand. But that history has otherwise been ignored as the company focused on a fraternity, sorority, college consumer who aspired to look like the beautiful models in their advertising campaigns with photos by Bruce Weber. This is what the shop looks like at Arden Mall in Sacramento. But I remember when it opened in the 1990s, it was across the way here and it was at least double the size. The place was really appealing and you couldn't walk by without wanting to go in. This is the old shop here and it's now a games and toy store. This current store still gives a nod to the old Abercrombie & Fitch with this hanging canoe, and there's a moose head on the wall that goes back to the Teddy Roosevelt days. The 1990s boom of the brand under Mike Jeffries began to lose its power when the company came under scrutiny for its racist hiring practices. Jeffries stepped down in 2014, and thereafter the company has made a considerable effort at diversifying the company. But that company, called Abercrombie & Fitch really has nothing to do with the go-to sporting goods store of yesteryear.
Thanks for watching.